Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is our first module in this course. I hope that by now you have completed your assignment to introduce yourself, also the survey that we asked that was due last week. Also hope that by the time you get to this video, you have already had a chance to read the introduction to the module and that you have reviewed what are the objectives for this module. And now we're going to go through this video in which I will explain the material that we need to know, that later on you will be tested on and so forth. And there will be one or more assignments after or additional readings after each one of the modules. So let's begin. We're going to begin talking about us human beings, and of course, in this context of a religion course, then we are interested in human beings as religious people. And one thing that's very interesting about us is that religion is part of every civilization that is known to us currently and throughout history. So religion is not this incidental aspect of humanity, but it is something that is inherent to human beings. In every part of the world, in every culture, in every language, in every structure, there are clear behaviors and rituals and so forth that make it evident the religious nature of human beings. So what is it about human beings that makes this possible? Everything we do right now, listening to this video, the memories that we're making, our personality, the things that we like and dislike, even how religious we are, it all happens in the brain. The human brain is kind of the center, the part of the body that makes us present. It is through brain activity that we have a perception of our world and that we participate in the world. So the question of where is religion in the brain? Is there like a particular structure that is responsible for religion? If you remove that, then religion goes away. There have been some reports, for example, of people suffering from something called hyper-religiosity. Usually it happens to people with epilepsy. So is that a region of the brain that is the religion circuits of the brain, and that's why seizures in these areas will cause hyper-religiosity? Someone proposed a few years ago that there is some genetic component that in our DNA there is a God gene, and that's why we are religious and gave that gene a name and so forth, and say this is the reason why we are religious. We're going to answer those questions in this module. So we're going to start by thinking of things that makes us unique. Like what's unique about us compared to other species? If you think of a dog and a cat and a fish, a turtle, a bird, and you take inventory of the things that they are capable of doing. You know, what are their behaviors? What can they do? And we compare that to the things that we as human beings can do. right? What makes us different? What is unique to us? Sometimes, as a matter of fact, we can describe this as a uh, quantitative difference. In other words, uh, we share with some other species certain capacities that, in the case of human beings, they're just expressed to a greater degree. So let's say, for example, I say, well, birds can sing, and humans can sing too. We can do a lot more with music. Like birds have a very limited repertoire of songs. We have an unlimited number of songs that we can learn and sing. And birds cannot make music instruments. We can make music instruments. So we can make uh, music in many different ways, and we can create melodies, and we can uh, do different compositions, add words to it. So, I mean, you have a bird that sings, and you have humans who sing, and it's just a matter of a quantitative difference. Now, some will argue that the difference is so vast, that is such a great difference, that it's not that we do the same thing at a higher quantity, but actually that we are qualitatively different. That there is something about us, even in this example of our capacity to make music, that makes us completely different. It's a different category in which there are some similarities to what other species can do, but in our case, it is like a different thing. Um, One of the defining features of human beings is our ability, our intelligence, our ability to think and solve problems. And here again, there is a big difference. Our species, as you may know, is called Homo sapiens sapiens. And that's Latin for humans who know. And more specifically, we are humans who know that we know. So that's why Homo sapiens sapiens. We know that we know. And not only that, we know that we don't know. So we also know the limits of our knowledge. We know that we don't know everything. We know that we don't know most things, as a matter of fact, that there's a lot of mystery in the universe, that there are many things that we don't understand. So we have that knowledge, that awareness. Oh, there's more out there that we don't understand than of what we understand. But we're trying to figure it out, or at least we take a certain position that we'll talk about in this course uh, before the mystery, before the things that are beyond, that are transcendent, that are beyond our capability of understanding. So definitely intelligence will be, one of the things that most distinguish us as human beings. Another thing is our ability to communicate, right? And so, well, there's other species that communicate. Dolphins have even a limited vocabulary. They communicate. Monkeys, chimpanzees, whales, fish, so there seems to be some level of communication in every species where they can uh, uh, either just send an alarm. I'll give you an example. Right here outside my house, there are some wild birds, and when these birds are nesting, um, if an animal like a cat or my dog goes out, they get very excited and they start like sounding an alarm. They make this noise that sounds like an alarm. It's like alerting all the other birds. Oh, there's a cat or a dog or something that could be a threat to the nest. And another behavior they exhibit is start flying low, close to the animal. Sometimes this causes them to get hurt. And more than one occasion, I've found the dead bird. Usually the dog doesn't care that much, but the cat, who seems very annoyed by the low flying attack, sometimes turns around and kills the bird. I give you that example because I want to come back to it in a few minutes. Um, so, but we as human beings, we communicate at a whole other level. I mean, not only we can talk to each other, obviously our vocabulary is far more complex, has rules, has multiple sounds for the same meaning or different meanings. We have dictionaries to explain what uh, we mean by certain words. We have multiple languages. We can learn more than one language. We can write, so we can put our knowledge in writing and then pass it on to other people that we don't even know, but that they can read what we wrote. We can make videos and communicate this way. And people not only can read, but they can also hear us and see us, and go through the material or be entertained by the things we do. We preserve those writings and recordings, so not only during our lifetimes, but generations that come after, they will be able to read the material or watch the videos or listening to the recorders, to the recordings, so forth. So we communicate at a much more sophisticated and deeper level. Not only depth in terms of the quantities of things that we can produce and how well we can communicate it, but we can also do abstract thinking. We can even do thinking about thinking, metacognition, right? So we can um, abstract to a deep level, and we can communicate these abstractions to other people. So that would be something that distinguishes us from every other species that we know. Another interesting thing that distinguishes us is our ability to study other species, right? We never see, well, there are these cows that are studying the pigs, or, these birds that are trying to learn about lions. No, that doesn't happen in nature. The only animal, the only species that does this is us. We create catalogs. We divide them. We give them names to the different species. We study them. We describe them. We create documentaries about it, books, and so forth. So we have this ability to not only understand ourselves, but also to understand the other animals and things that we encounter in our environment. So, I mean, the list of differences between human beings and other species is a long list. There are many, many things that distinguish us. And religion is one of those things. It's not, again, it's not unique, but definitely religion is something that only happens with humans. Humans are the only religious species in the universe that we know. So there are other animals that they might exhibit some behavior that in some way might be uh, religious, in very, very primitive ways, but definitely nothing to the degree that we can be aware of transcendence and relate to transcendence and so forth. So I was telling you about the birds outside my house, that they sing in an alarming way, a very distinctive and alarm sounding way when they see an animal and they're nesting. Um, on one occasion, not too long ago, there was one bird that the cat got to it, and the bird was dead. And then another bird was coming close to it, right? And it was like trying to move it, trying to see what was wrong with this bird. You might say, well, that behavior exhibits some like awareness that something's wrong, that maybe uh, a certain level of knowledge that this bird has, it was hurt, and is now dead, so forth. So there seems to be some sensitivity, right? But birds don't bury their dead. They don't. Um, Actually, no species does. They don't express any hopes for eternal life or salvation or any of those things that are part of religion. So even though there might be that level of sensitivity, also certain monkey tribes, they also exhibit some behaviors that are very peculiar when some member of the species dies. Nothing close to what the way that the human beings perceive this and act about it. So there's something that is very, very unique about us. So let's go back to the brain, and all of our experiences. They take place in the brain. The brain is where our eyes and ears and mouth and taste and touch and all the other senses, because there's a bunch of senses. We have senses for balance and circulation and so forth. So there's about 25 senses, right? But the five senses that are most commonly known, right? The senses that allow us to perceive the external world, they're all wired to the brain. So when we say I see, exactly, I is that's a mystery. That's consciousness, right? Who's this I that sees? But definitely the seeing happens in the brain. And when I say I hear you talking, again, there's this reference to the self, to this I, that is not clear where that I exists in the brain. That's the consciousness, but we don't know, exactly where is that. Is that an emerging property of the brain? I mean, it's a mystery. Neuroscience does not understand where consciousness comes from. It's a mystery. But there's this I that has the experience. But the experience itself is mediated through the brain, meaning that it happens through the brain. So we know what parts of the brains are involved in seeing, right here, the occipital lobe, in hearing, the temporal lobes, in smelling and touch and so forth. There are like nerves that carry signals, and that's how we have these perceptions, right? So the we have in the brain these cells that are known as neurons, and these neurons, they communicate with each other. So they are interconnected. Um, they are this part of the neuron called the axon that connects to this other part of another neuron called the dendrite. And what neurons do is that they send the signal over. So an electrical signal is generated through an electrochemical process, and it causes the cell, the neuron, to fire an action potential. And it's like an electrical discharge. And that discharge gets to the other, to the nerve ending on the other side. And it causes an electrochemical reaction on that side. So it is this exchange of neurons firing, right, action potentials that create our experiences. So, for example, you're seeing right now. I say, well, I see. I mean, I am looking at this video and I have all these images that I'm perceiving. So, what's going on? Well, what's going on is that the light is hitting through your eyes, your retina. It goes through a lens and it goes to the other side. And the retina is the back part of the eye. And there you have nerve endings. You have neurons that they react to light. So the different frequencies of light are causing these neurons to fire. So you have a pattern of neurons that are sending that signal through the optical nerve to the back of the brain. And that's where, we begin to process this perception. Uh, vision in not only humans, but vision in all the living animals that can perceive through the world through vision. Um, is not like this camera in front of me that is simply passively capturing everything that is in front of it. It's not like that at all. Vision is interpreting, let's say, what is perceived through vision is a process that involves prior knowledge, experience, the interpretation of these group of neurons firing, and that information getting to those vision circuits. So is there a part of the brain that would say, okay, so if there's a part that processes vision, is there a part that processes religion? Is there a religious part of the brain? Was one of the questions that we asked. And the answer is, well, there are obviously parts of the brain that process everything that has to do with religion, but no, there is no that these circuits that are exclusively dedicated to religious experiences, right? Different religious experiences might involve different parts of the brain, and so there might be different brain circuits that are implicated in certain experiences that we might think of as religious experiences, but there is not a one particular place in the brain that if we were to remove or activate that circuit, it will impair or facilitate a religious experience. Let me answer the other question that I asked at the beginning. Do we have some component of our DNA? In our DNA, we have these things that we call genes, right? And the expression of the genes causes proteins to produce proteins through genes, and they dictate many of the biological processes that we experience. Is there a particular gene that is specific to religious experience? And the answer is no. There is no such thing as a God gene. There's definitely genes that are involved in having religious experiences, but it is not like some particular group of genes or particular gene that is the gene that is responsible for religious experience. So then, where does it happen in the brain? So the answer is that it happens in many places, but the implicated areas are the areas that have to do with intelligence. So there is a correlation um, between the fact that we are Homo sapiens sapiens, the fact that we are knowing animals, the fact that we can think and that we are intelligent at this level, that has to do with asking questions of ultimate concern, trying to understand um, our experiences, and then realizing, becoming aware, becoming sensitive to even that which is transcendent. If we're going to unpack this throughout the course many times, so this is just kind of the introduction to this idea. So let me elaborate a little bit on this. So let's say, for example, that you walk into your bedroom, and on top of your bed, there is some object that you have not seen before. Something is hard to imagine because we can only imagine the things that we have seen before. So this would be something that you have never seen before. And it's on top of your bed, and it's very obvious, and you walk in and you notice that there is this object that is there. Now, normally, right, a lot of people, if not everyone, right, will wonder, I mean, what is this? What's it doing here? Who put this here? What does it do? Is it dangerous? Is it threatening in any way? Is it helpful? Is this a surprise? Is it my birthday? So we will start thinking and asking questions because we need to understand. Perhaps if you have a dog and the dog comes in the room, the dog might notice that there is an object that is new and unfamiliar, and might go there and sniff it to see if it has a scent, whatever. But he's not going to ponder like who put this here, why is it here, and what does it mean that it's here, right? So that is our capacity, our intelligence, our ability to think and ask questions about the nature of things, of reality, of history, of whatever is going on. And that's how we initially arrive to religious thought. So religious thought comes from the uncertainty, the search for meaning, the trying to understand, how come we're here? How come we die? How come we suffer? And then, if people say, well, there's a good loving God, then if there's a good loving God that is omnipotent, that is all powerful, how come there's suffering in the world? There's children who die of cancer. There's a pandemic going on right now. So what's happening? What's up with that? So we raise these questions. There's a theologian, a German theologian, Protestant theologian. His name is Paul Tillich. And he calls these questions of ultimate concern, right? And it's not that we raise these questions all the, that we spend the entire day thinking about these things and raising these questions all the time. And there could be even a time in our lives that we don't think about that at all, that we don't worry about it unless something happens, right? Unless there's a tragedy and then there's death and we wonder about the meaning of life, or, moments like that, when there's dire need, and then we become sensitive, right? And we might be like more inclined to wonder and ponder these questions. But certainly, at some point in life, most people, that time comes, right, when we ask these questions. And for some people, this might have happened early on, or you might have had the opportunity to talk about these things, not because you were asking any questions. They came to you, and you come from a family, for example, with you had a religious upbringing through your family. You had exposure to these things in school or in church, and so forth. So you have been dealing with this question. And there's other people that know that this has not come up. All right, so now it's coming up. So those are the kind of questions that we're going to ask in this course. They're hard questions, so we're going to, address them head on. How come, right? And what do we know? What we don't know? And what can we expect? And so forth. So if we look at intelligence, then we're going to find that the fact that we are intelligent human beings then is kind of the source, is what makes possible religion. And the reason why religion is only found in our species is because the other species do not have the level of abstraction, they do not have in their brain the circuits that are necessary for this level of what we call intelligence. As a matter of fact, one of the things that is different about the human brain from the brains of other species is not our size, not the size of our brain. The there are many animals that they have bigger brains, like whales have bigger brains, elephants have bigger brains. So it's not the size of our brain, but it is the presence of this part of the brain that is called the neocortex, and the number of connections in the outside of the brain. The neo means new, cortex, so it's the new cortex, evolutionarily new, and this neocortex is what um, allows to think and abstractly and be so intelligent. And it is there that we're going to find in the interaction of different parts of the brain, of this neocortex. That's where we're going to find intelligence and religion. When we mention different regions of the brain, which I will be doing as we have this conversation, I want to make sure that we understand that the brain um, works through interactions of neurons everywhere. So one of the things that have made possible the progress that we've made in the last 25 years in neuroscience is our ability today to see a functioning brain while the person is alive. So years ago, the only way to study the brain was to study the brain of dead people, or people who were hurt, or something wrong. They had a surgery and they removed the hippocampus in one case, and they said, well, this patient was having epilepsy, so let's remove the hippocampus and see what happens. Actually, they removed the whole temporal lobe, and boom! Now the person, became fine. It was fine. The epilepsy was reduced, but now the person cannot make new memories. So uh, that's how they discovered that the hippocampus is involved in making new memories. So the anterograde amnesia that the patient uh, suffered the rest of his life was the surgery gave us that knowledge. But now, today, we can actually take a picture of the brain, an MRI, the functional MRI, PET scan, and we can see what areas of the brains are active while the person is doing certain tasks. It's still, even though we haven't made so much progress, it is still a big machine. The MRI machine is a big machine with a lot of magnets and making loud noises. So it's not like we can take this machine everywhere and see what's going on in the brain where a person is playing golf, because that cannot. We can show a movie of golf and see what happens in the brain, but not when the person is actually playing, because the technology is not there yet. The machines are too big. But what they do is that they measure oxygen flow in the blood. So blood takes oxygen to different areas. So if there is an area that is particularly active when the person is doing a certain task, then we say, oh, so look, it seems that there is some activity here. So this area of the brain must be involved, must be implicated in whatever task the person is doing. Right now, that does not mean that that's the only area that is implicated. Actually, even if that area is identified because of the higher consumption of oxygen during the taking of the MRI or the functional MRI, it does not mean that that's the only area implicated. So we know that when we produce language, for example, we know that there's an area on the left side of the brain called Broca area that is involved in producing speech. Is Broca area the only area a speech is all produced in that little area? No, absolutely not. There's many other areas that are involved, but definitely this particular area called Broca it is involved in production of language. And just like the reception of language, the understanding of language, there's another area in the temporal lobe called vertical area. And that area is implicated in receptive language. Of course, it's not limited to that area. There's many other parts of the brain that are also participating in this. So when we talk about, intelligence and asking questions and our sense of the transcendence, and so forth, for example, one of the areas that is most implicated is our frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is where we have the executive power. That's the thinking, the planning, the all this executive function of the brain happens in the frontal lobe. And in the next lobe right here is called the parietal lobe. The interaction between stuff going on in the front of your brain and in the area that is kind of a little bit back, that's called the parietal lobe. In the interaction of these two areas is where those are the areas that are implicated in intelligence and in religion. There have been several studies that they have been done with meditating nuns and different Newberg. Dr. Newberg has done a lot of experiments. He's a neurotheologian. He's interested in what's going on in the brain when people are having certain religious experiences, and of course that the areas that he has found to be implicated, interestingly, coincide 99% with the areas in other studies that are implicated in intelligence. So and we could say from this that religion is an intelligent behavior. It comes from the fact that human beings are intelligent. Now you might say, well, but is that so? I mean, I I know people who are religious, very religious, and they're very dumb. Well, yes, that could happen. Of course, that like in everything else, there is a spectrum, right? And there's everything in that spectrum. So, yes, you have people that we might consider, well, it's not exactly very, very intelligent, and it might be very religious, but it is intelligent enough to be able to grasp, right, religion. So so, well, I know people who are very, very intelligent, very educated, and they're not religious at all. That's true, because just the fact that you have the potential, or that you have the equipment that is necessary to do this, does not mean that you necessarily develop it. So you might have somebody, for example, has a very good ear for music, but is not a musician, or someone who has a great ability for telling stories, but is not a storyteller, or it doesn't write, it's not a writer, it's doing something else. You find, for example, it's very common when a student wants to ask me about, when a student asks me about studying computer science. It's one of the areas that I have studied and actually make a living programming computers. So, say, well, how can I tell if I'm going to like this field? Usually my question is, are you good in math? Because I find that people who are good in math, they usually do very well in programming. Um, but how much math is involved in programming? Not much at all, but if you have the skills, the organization, your brain, if you have the structure in your brain that facilitates you being good in math, usually you have those same connections are good for doing computer science and programming and so forth. So the same thing happens here, right? So we do have, all human beings, we do have enough intelligence, right, to be able to have these religious sensitivities. Now, I want to talk about intelligence a little bit more, because intelligence is also a controversial thing. And I am going to give you an assignment to read about um, multiple intelligence, multiple intelligences. There is a cognitive psychologist from Harvard University. His name is Howard Gardner. And a few years back, he wrote a book uh, called Frames of Mind. And in that book, he described uh, as intelligences, not just one intelligence, but intelligences, different abilities or talents that you find in people. So the the main idea at the time, today challenged by Gardner, and it's not free of controversy, but definitely Gardner had a big impact in our thinking about intelligence. But at the time, it was believed that intelligence was this thing that existed in our human in the brain, that was like a capacity that you were born with. And then there was the idea and the very common belief that probably some of you think that is that way, because you have not been told otherwise, that IQ test somehow measured that intelligence. So usually referred as G for general intelligence, that somehow you would take this test, and the test, just like you can measure blood pressure or temperature, you could measure intelligence. And the result of your IQ, which was a number, was quantified. So you say, oh, I have an IQ of, 120. Then that means that you are above average intelligence, which is 100 is the average, right? So, and it was somehow measuring that. Well, with Gardner and other people that have studied this, they disagree. The IQ test measured anything. IQ tests are correlations, they're not measurements. Uh, Basically, what they've done is that they have administered so many of these tests that are able to make some predictions based on results. So they say, for example, if a 5-year-old kid knows what a rake is, when they grow up later, they're going to do well in math. I'm making that up. But, it's that type of correlation, that performance on a test at a certain age, or being able to answer certain questions that are culturally biased, of course, but being able to answer those questions is a predictor of later performance. And that's what IQ tests do. They don't measure anything. And Gardner and others, they actually believe that there is no such thing as a general intelligence. But instead, what they propose is that there are different extraordinary talents that they have the neurological structures behind it to support it and do these calculations that are different for many different peoples and involve different areas. So they say, for example, there is a music intelligence. That's what one of the intelligence that Gardner proposes, right? So there are people that they have this great ability, this great intelligence, this computational ability to make music and understand music, and write music and produce music. So there is such a thing as music intelligence, right? It's not all about science and reading and math, but there's this other capabilities that they have, the structural support. They have the brain has some unique circuits involving this that give people these abilities, and these talents, and that they should rightly so be called intelligences. So, for example, you might find people that are very good at interpersonal relationships. Right? They're very good at getting along with other people. They immediately become friends. They can interact with other people. They're good in sales. You know, they can sell you stuff because they have this intelligence. They figure it out. They're very quick at understanding social cues. You know, so forth. So Gardner would say, well, that is one intelligence, right? So he went through a process to decide what makes it what counts as an intelligence, what does not count as an intelligence. So what does he say about religious intelligence? Now, this has been a problem for Gardner because Gardner in Harvard, he felt that if he named one of the in the list of intelligence, if he named one intelligence as religion or religious intelligence, that he will get a lot of backslash from his department, his peers, you know, so forth. So, you know, he's Jewish himself, but he was like very hesitant to do this. So he came up with other names, and he called it like an existential intelligence, the ability to ask, or what we have called, what Paul Tillich called, questions of ultimate concern. And he was happy to label it that. I label it religious intelligence, faith intelligence. There is, and of course, it's very related to general intelligence, meaning our general ability as human beings to function at this level. But yes, definitely there are some people that they have, like just like there are musicians and there are writers and there are people with ability to relate to one another, you know, so forth. But there is also people that they have sensitivity to deals with the questions of God, the questions of existence, and so forth. So, in conclusion, then. Human beings we distinguish ourselves because of different abilities. Among probably at the very top is our intellectual capacity, our ability to become aware of our environments, to ask questions, not only accept the things as they appear, but actually question what's behind, how come, you know, what's going on. And that sensitivity makes it ripe for a relationship. It's going to go deeper than just, you know, an awareness, but it goes deeper. Now, we will see this as we go through the course, but it creates the possibility of a relationship with our creator. However it is that we articulate this, however it is that we, you know, express in different belief systems and so forth. But at the bottom line, at the end of this, is the idea of a relationship with God. Right? Receive different names, you know, so forth, but it's the relationship with the source of life, the source of existence, and so forth. And that's kind of the starting point. And it is possible because of our intellectual capacity, because our brains have that capacity that is unique to us in the neocortex of developing this sensitivity. Now, I want to conclude this first module with a question that we're going to ask ourselves in this course many times, and that definitely is going to be on the test, and it is something that will be asked in different words, in different ways. And I just want to provide, you know, this answer that consistently this will be the answer, and we will see why as we progress. You know, what is religion about? What's the bottom line? What is when we look at the different religions in the world, and we look at what is it that they're trying to do? Uh, what is the, the purpose, what is the pursuit, and so forth. And if I have asked this question in class, and of course you get many different answers, right? And religion has to do with God, religion has to do with uh, sin, or it has to do with salvation and heaven, and so forth. So there are many different answers, but the answer that we're going to explore, and um, the bottom line answer to this question of religion is about love, is about relationships with one another, and a relationship that is characterized by this word that is a little bit ambiguous, because different people will define it in different ways, but it has to do with love, with responding to the needs of other people. That will be the definition of love that we will explore in this class. So this intelligence that makes us aware and capable of asking questions of ultimate concern, that makes possible a relationship with our Creator, where all that leads into something called love. Um, in Judeo-Christian tradition, in the Catholic tradition, um, looking at Jesus, what was it that Jesus talked about? What was his message? What is it? Was the bottom line of the things that Jesus talked about and taught? Well, it is about love. That's I'll give you one commandment, and we need to know a little bit more of the context in Jewish thought of what a commandment is, to understand the tremendous value of one commandment. Jews have many laws, many commandments, there were many things to do. Through the law is how the Jews relate to God. So the relationship of the people of Israel comes through Moses, right? That gets the law from God. So so law and commandments are like very central thought. So when Jesus, who was a Jew, gives a commandment, gives a law, this very Jewish thing, the commandment that he gives is the commandment of love. He said, love one another. That's what you need to do. So religion is about relationships. It's about love. It's about relationship with God, relationship with people. The two of them are joined together, and it's all about love. So we'll explore that in a lot more detail as we progress through the course. So in conclusion, just to wrap it up and summarize what we talked about today and what this lesson is all about, we took a look at ourselves, who we are, and we reflected on what makes us different from every other species that we know. And we say, well, the one thing that makes us different from every other species um, I mean, there are many things, right? But on top of that list is probably our intelligence, our capacity to solve problems, to understand things, our awareness of dealing with the world, the things around us, our way of abstracting these things. So that is what makes us very different. And we use this in everything we do, in the culture we build, we in the world, the human world that we create, in the things that we do with other things like communication and music and so forth. Everything we do involves this capacity that we have, this neocortex in our brain that is capable of doing all these things. And religion is among those, right? Religion is one of the things that's why it is present in every civilization, in every group of humans throughout history. Whenever they discover cave where they discover some um, uh, skeletons or fossils or whatever they discover that where other humans have lived, they always consistently discover that they were religious people. There was the religion was part of the life from primitive until this day, until today. So that is one of the most distinct things about human beings. Like I said, I am going to assign you a reading about multiple intelligences and then ask you to do some writing. So what's next is to go to the assignments and complete those. Thank you very much, and I will see you soon.